The video game God of War (2018) soft reboot (2018) is considered by many to be one of the best games of the last generation of consoles.
It's a growing up of the series, it's an evolution, it's a continuation, whatever it is.
I honestly believe it is the game of the generation. I really, really believe that it is the defining game of the generation thus far, okay?
But I'm happy to say that it's at the very least worth the hype.
But I didn't expect it to be a thrilling journey in which every aspect of it complements the others to form a masterpiece that is by far the most stirring and memorable game in the series.
4 out of 5. Finally, the PS4 receives its knack killer.
And while it was considered that for a variety of reasons, a few common threads people were highlighting were things like the combat with the axe or blades, or the story with its performances and themes, and Mimir with all of his Mimirness.
Kratos, this reminds me of the time me and my brother went to Nibelheim.
And I loved the game for all of these reasons as well. The story that this game and Ragnarok have is among some of the best character writing I've experienced, and every time I've given an opportunity to throw that axe, I do. But my personal favorite standout moment from God of War comes not during the initial setup or the ultimate payoff, but during a time in the narrative when Kratos and Atreus' relationship is beginning to break, and the line between player and player character begins to blur. The relationship between player and player character is one of the most unique experiences that the medium of video games gives to its participants. People can read literature and see themselves as the main character, and you can watch a movie with an everyman like Luke Skywalker and feel his victory over the Empire with him. But in a video game, it requires a level of participation that other mediums of art and entertainment just don't have access to. Reading takes effort, but it's not like if you read too poorly, Harry Potter will lose to Voldemort, and you have to try reading the book over again, better somehow, in hopes that Harry will win based on your effort. The reader of a book or watcher of a movie may share in the triumph that a character feels, but in a game, you are responsible for that triumph. I love this about video games, because truly putting yourself in another's shoes, where their victories and failures are your own, when done right, can create such an interesting playground for what game developers can cook up and what game players can experience. To set up the context behind what I'm talking about, let's briefly recap God of War, shall we? So in the ancient times of the early 2000s, the first God of War that I have never played came out, and apparently it was pretty good. Wouldn't know, I'm a fake gamer.
You're not an intellectual, you're a fake and a fraud.
In God of War, original God of War, original God of War, Kratos is this guy, and then he accidentally kills his own family, and their ashes are cursed onto his skin by Ares, who gaslit him into doing it in the first place. Kratos then goes on a giant revenge quest over the series to kill every Greek god there is, until he decides to reboot himself into God of War 2018, where he ends up in Norse mythology this time, and is doing his darndest not to get gaslit again. Guess we all see how that turned out.
Wait. They knew everything that was going to happen.
The game starts out in a familiar rhyming poetry George Lucas sort of way.
It's like poetry, so if they rhyme, every stanza kind of rhymes with the last one.
With the player playing as Kratos in God of War 2018, and the literal first thing you do is prepare a funeral pyre for your dead wife so you can take her ashes to be set loose from the tallest peak in all the realms.
She wanted us to spread her ashes on the highest peak in all the realms.
On this journey of parents, children, and regret, you encounter parents and children feeling, you guessed it, horrible rage.
And feed your soul to the vilest filth in hell! That is my promise!
Now, what I just described is I'm sure going to be an Emmy-nominated Amazon Prime show in 2029, but that's because the narrative is only half of the video game equation, where the real genius comes into play not just in the gameplay section, but as I mentioned earlier, where the gameplay and the narrative come together and the player can truly experience Kratos' emotions beyond marveling at Christopher Judge's excellent performance. So how does the game actually play? It's not that intense, so this section should be short. Martin Short to be specific. But in the game God of War 2018, parentheses blah blah blah, you play as Kratos, Ghost of Sparta. The game moves from the sort of hack and slash gameplay of the original to a more intentional combat system, where each swing of Kratos' Leviathan axe carries weight and consequence. The important thing to note, though, is that the player can technically control more than just Kratos, and the reasoning is baked early on into the narrative of the game.
Only fire when I tell you to fire.
This simple line, and the rhythm the player gets used to in controlling Atreus, is at the center of my point, and I promise we're reaching the center of this donut hole. But first I must explain the heart of the context.
A donut hole in a donut's hole. But we must look a little closer.
All games have it, but very few games do it as well as God of War 2018 does it, and that is having the narrative progression be borderline flush with the gameplay progression. Not only do Kratos and Atreus get more attack varieties as the game progresses, but their combat communication and teamwork also improves. Early on in the game, Atreus will only do what you tell him to do, and be a bit unsure of doing anything else, since he's not well versed in combat. But as the story continues and Atreus experiences more battles, he begins to get new attacks that Kratos can command, like magically summoning phantom animals to stun and attack enemies, as well as becoming bolder in combat, like jumping on an enemy to help stun them so Kratos can attack more easily. The game may communicate the state of characters and how they feel visually or verbally.
You've been gone a long time!
But on top of that, the player can feel the connection between Kratos and Atreus strengthening by how they act in combat, which is the donut hole at the center of my point. So first, let me set the scene. The big emotional story at the heart of God of War parentheses 2018 is the relationship between Kratos and Atreus. The God of War who is so filled with grief, anger, and shame towards his past that he hides his godhood from his own son, and that son that can feel that rift.
The boy will want answers.
That will be my problem.
Whatever you're hiding, you cannot protect him forever.
Around halfway through the game, this rift manifests itself physically in Atreus, and he becomes very sick, and the player must go to great lengths to restore his health. In an effort to make sure this doesn't happen again, Kratos finally reveals the truth to his son.
I'm a god, boy. From another land far from here.
At first, Atreus is relatively relaxed and relieved to hear this.
Can I turn into an animal?
But slowly, this information starts to twist and reshape the way he interacts with others. It all begins to come to a head when the gang of Kratos, Atreus, and Mimir are on what they think is the final step of their journey up the mountain to release Faye's ashes. And Atreus turns into just the most hateable kid you've ever met.
Let me guess. Your brother isn't as talented as you, and his work is junk.
Those things are accurate. Your point?
It's all you ever talk about, over and over. Do something about it or shut up already.
I see.
Yeah! We're sick of hearing about little people's little problems!
In this conflict and dissonance between the two, Kratos and Atreus becomes fully formed when the gang enters this large room, and Atreus does something he's never done before. Right after you initiate combat with the enemies, Atreus, who is only supposed to fire when and where Kratos determines, goes off on his own and calls his own shots, literally. At a time when Kratos and Atreus are at their most odds and farthest apart in their understanding of one another, the player is also in the least control of what Atreus does. This line from Atreus at the end of the fight really seals the deal for me as well.
Have you forgotten your training?
Oh, are you talking to me? Thought you didn't like my tongue.
As the moment when player and player character fuse together in joined rage, because I cannot stand this little douche every time this part of the game happens, and this is a game I have played through around half a dozen times over the years. To a lot of people, I'm sure it's not the most groundbreaking concept in the world. In the moment, for most people, it's bound to get a good nasal puff at most. But man, I just really love it. I think it's the next level version of that thing The Last of Us did with Joel and Ellie with the ladder during the giraffe scene, and when it eventually gets turned into its TV show adaptation, parentheses of context that it isn't a huge dumpster fire, I'm sure the show will be fine, but in the same way that The Last of Us on HBO was mostly fine. Side note, but also important for the context, but I was just really bored by the uneven pacing, and the fact that I adore the video game The Last of Us and this real-life recreation just did nothing but give me less interesting versions of the two of my favorite game characters of all time. Anyways, neither here nor there. I love God of War 2018, parentheses, soft reboot, soft reboot, parentheses, 2018 or whatever. I love this moment when the game itself communicates to the player that there is a breaking happening in this relationship, and it does it through gameplay verbs rather than just telling the player explicitly what's going on. And I just love video games, and I love their place as a developing art form for creative people to express ideas. I love what the team at Sony Santa Monica did to connect me to the emotions of Kratos and Atreus in God of War 2018 and Ragnarok, and I just can't wait to see what else the team is cooking up. Thank you for watching my video.